The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus said to his disciples, I tell you, make friends for yourselves with dishonest wealth, so that when it fails, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. The person who is trustworthy in very small matters is also trustworthy in great ones, and the person who is dishonest in very small matters is also dishonest in great ones. If, therefore, you are not trustworthy with dishonest wealth, who will trust you with true wealth? If you are not trustworthy with what belongs to another, who will give you what is yours? No servant can serve two masters. He will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all these things and sneered at him. And he said to them, You justify yourselves in the sight of others, but God knows your hearts. For what is of human esteem is an abomination in the sight of God. The Gospel of the Lord. Yeah, this is one of my favorite little, I don't know how to say, like a distillation of what's going on in the passage, where we see here the kind of, casual commentary of the evangelist here, the casual commentary of St. Luke. He says, the Pharisees who loved money heard all these things and sneered at him. It's like, okay, well, it's not a low blow. I mean, he's landing a big punch there, right? The Pharisees who loved money heard all these things and sneered at him, and then we see that, right? What Jesus's rebuke. I mean, it's powerful. It really is. You justify yourselves in the sight of others. God knows your hearts. What is of human esteem is an abomination in the sight of God. It's an abomination in the sight of God. It's a horrible. I mean, I don't know that there's a stronger accusation, a stronger rebuke leveled at anyone in all the scriptures. This is abomination in the sight. And what is the challenge there? Like, what's going on? Is to say, like, what? I don't really want to put it in these terms, but I will. What game are you playing? It's not simply like, whose team are you on? It's what game are you playing? So the idea is that we put God at the very center of our hearts and lives. We keep our eyes, our hearts, our minds trained on Jesus. Then everything has to conform to Him. Everything finds its place in our life, like as it relates to Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Let me try to put it in starker terms. Jesus has called. Now, look. Okay, so I'm not doing this on like universal terms here. I'm doing this for you. Okay, so this is you specifically, and we can argue this later if you want. Okay, but let me just say, you have been called by Jesus. You have responded yes. I think because you wouldn't be here this morning if you didn't say yes, at least at some point. And you want to say yes more, right? So you're saying yes, but you're also growing into your yes to Jesus. Okay, but He's called you, and you've said yes. So He's picking the team. He picked you, and you said, yeah, sure. Like I'll do it. I'll come along. I'll play. I'll work. Whatever it is, right? I will allow you to pick me. And I will go with you. You have summoned me. I'm responding yes. When we take that step, at least at this point, when we take that step, everything is His. Everything. Your whole life. So this is what your yes is. Like, you're trying to grow into your yes. You want to know what it is? You have to give Him everything you have and are. Everything you have and are is to be given to God, given back to God, and used for His purposes. That's what you're in the process of becoming. So that's what I say, like that's I don't know, it's a closed story in a sense. This is one narrative of what life is. And we could debate on the outside of these walls, we could debate whether or not that's the right narrative. But within these walls, there's no debate. Jesus has summoned you, and you've said yes, and you're saying yes. You're growing into your yes to him. And it requires the complete reorientation of your life, focused squarely on Jesus as the central point. So what doesn't in our life, like what doesn't conform to God, what isn't given over to him and his purposes, in that story is wasted, or worse. Because it's not just like wasted, like, okay, well that's, so I get, I'm accruing all of this, plus one, plus one, plus one, plus one. And then that stuff is like zeros, right? Whatever. It can be worse because it can drag us off course, and it might push us into another narrative, might push us into a different story, or like I said, different game. So we're not playing the Jesus-centered game anymore. We're playing some other centered game. Maybe like, as he says here, mammon-centered game. And we realize that the world at large is driven by the mammon-centered game. I will say most all of our ills come from being a mammon-oriented society, a mammon-oriented culture. We worship mammon. We worship wealth and money, possessions. And look, Jesus is going after them for the same thing. This is not a new problem. Right? There's a new solution, it's Jesus, but it's not a new problem. Yeah? Because here, right, the Pharisees, of course, the Pharisees who loved money, they had money. And they were keen on, they had in their imagination the idea that the land is ours, the promised land is given to us by God. That's a sign of God's favor. But when they try to use it for their own purposes, to enrich themselves, and to not use the land for the purposes that God has in mind, then again they're playing a different game. And that game leads to destruction. It leads to inhumanity in the world. It leads to injustice. It's the way of idolatry. Mammon is at the center and not the true and living God. And then people are abusing people, and people are throwing away other people, and all manner of horrific stuff that we see in our time, and that were of course prevalent at that time as well. But this is the question, right? Are we going to live to the call? But if we live to the call, then we have to see ourselves as stewards. There's a lot of language, and I wish we could pick it apart piece by piece, but there's a lot of language in this, right? The person who's trustworthy in very small matters, trustworthy in great ones. If you're not trustworthy with what belongs to another, who will give you what is yours? Well, everything you think you have doesn't belong to you. Nothing belongs to you. It all belongs to God. How are you managing God's resources? Right? I mean, I had a reflection yesterday with the kids. I didn't have an opportunity to share it, so I'll share it with you today. I'll inflict it on you today. It's is that turnaround point, like when some years ago when I started tithing, I was like, how much should I give back to God? And as soon as I started tithing, the question actually was, how much of this am I willing to keep for myself? A scary question. Because in fact, I want to keep nothing for myself. I want to use it all for God and his purposes, because that's why he gave it to me. Right? But this is not just a matter of wealth, although it is a matter of wealth, because Jesus is going after these guys. I mean, what did they have? They loved money. What did they have? What did they have? What kind of money did they have? They don't have the money that even I have. These guys, no? They're not as rich as any of us. I mean, they didn't have, plumbing in their house. Didn't have any number of things. They didn't have a supercomputer in their pocket, right? right? But Jesus so is driving after money, but he's not just driving after money. He's driving for everything. And guess what? As part of this story that we're living, Jesus is demanding everything from you. And he can do it because he has given you everything. And he continues to give you everything, continues to give you the fullness of his own life. We eat his body and blood. Can he give us anything more? Right? We feast on his body and blood. He breathes his spirit into us. My friends, he's giving us everything. And it's ours then. This total and radical reorientation is a project that God is pushing in our hearts and lives. Of course, right, this is a grand theme. If this is too much, if it's too big, it's ours to trust and follow Jesus. And we do it moment to moment. What best glorifies God here and now? And we could go anywhere, right? Wherever Jesus sends us, we'll go. Where we find ourselves, we have to ask that question. What best glorifies God here and now? Another way to say it, what is the most loving thing I can do? How do I best love God and love my neighbor here? And so then we start to look more and more like Jesus. Our lives make more sense within that narrative. And we get to, we're going to be, as we go, storing up the treasure that matters. Storing up treasure in what matters to God. Faith, hope, love, all the rest. And every good gift that he wants to give and see flourish in our hearts and lives. He's going to lead us. He's going to guide us. He's going to strengthen us as we seek to give ourselves completely in his service.